Shalom everybody, and thank you so much for joining in. My name is Omer Eshel. I'm the Consul of Tourism for the Midwest region, based in Chicago. I'm also a tour guide in Israel. So this is a series which we call Lunch and Learn. The main idea behind it is more of food for thought, not so much the physical food. The idea here is to give you better tools to understand the destination, which is called Israel. How to sell it better, how to understand it better, how to market it better for the target audiences. This is chapter 1 out of 3 courses, which is called the Hidden Gems. What you will see today are hidden gems which will usually not going to be on your regular itinerary. Of course, it's open for any questions, any discussion. Please feel free. This is a very informal informal lecture. So, without further ado, State of Israel. We all know or heard about the State of Israel. Actually, if you look at the size of the State of Israel, it is, if you take the State of Israel and put it into Lake Michigan, you can fit 3 states of Israel in one Lake Michigan. And you're still going to have enough room to swim about. So we're talking about a very, very small destination. What we will talk about today is actually the northern point of Israel from around the area of Beit She'an all the way up to the Lebanese border and to the Syrian border. Okay? Looking at the layout of the land itself, it is tiny. It is very, very small. But the amount of significant sites they can find in that small piece of land can fill up 5 itineraries. So let's look at the list of the places that we're about to discover today. We're going to speak about Mount Hermon. By the way, all of these presentations are built like an itinerary. So feel free to copy-paste it as it is, and you can put it in a geographical order. It's not just randomly. So we're going to start at Mount Hermon all the way up in the tip of Israel, heading down to Neve Ativ, which is a ski resort. Yes, a ski resort in Israel, as crazy as it sounds. Continuing down to Nimrod Castle, which is, well, you'll see in a few minutes what it is. Down from there to Marom Golan. We are now at the northeast part of the Golan Heights. Continue down to Benta Volcanic Park, Nahal Hermon, Gamla, which is the Masada of the north. Continue down to Kfar Haruv, and at the end we're going to finish at Hamad Gadil. So, let's start our journey. When you go up to the northern point of Israel, we have what we call the Hermon Mountain. As crazy as it sounds, the Hermon is a part of the Alpine Ridge. So you can tell me you're thinking a little bit crazy. The Alpine Ridge is actually in Italy, in Switzerland, and Austria. How exactly this has to do with Alpine Ridge? Well, the thing is, when the plates collides and the formation of the Alps began, the tip, the southeast tip of the Alpine Ridge is actually Mount Hermon. If you're going to look at the rock sediments of Mount Hermon, it's exactly the same as the Alps. So in a weird way, you can say I've been to Israel and actually been to the Alps themselves. It is the largest and only, that's hence the largest, natural ski resort in Israel. We do have another ski resort which is not natural, that's in the Gilboa Mountains, for a different lecture. But this one has a small ski resort where you can actually go, of course, and ski. Right next to Mount Hermon, there's a beautiful village by the name Neve Ativ. Neve Ativ was formed by actually Canadian Jews in the late 70s, and it is exactly the same as your typical Swiss chalet or vale in the Colorados. So that's what you're going to find in the Hermon Mountains. Continuing down from the Hermon Mountain is one, I think, of the most incredible places in the world. I'm talking about Nimrod Castle. Nimrod Castle is a castle that was built to protect Damascus from the Crusades in the Ayyubic period. So we're talking about the time of Saladin. This castle is built 100% for war, and this is where legends come from. Have you guys ever seen the movie Lord of the Rings? You remember the one with the Knights of Rohan?
Yes.
Alright, so the one with the Knights of Rohan, that castle that stretched on the mountain, the prototype of that castle is this one. In the late 19th century, there was a traveler in Israel by the name Mark Twain. We're all familiar about Mark Twain. Mark Twain visited Nimrod Castle, and he said, "This is the most magnificent ruined castle I've ever seen in my life." Today, you can visit the castle itself with secret passageways, secret chambers, The way of the defense of this castle is absolutely pure genius. And at nighttime, in the winter time, it's going to be actually not at night, it's going to be 5 p.m. You can schedule a tour with lanterns, walking inside the ruins of the castle using lanterns, going back in time to the 13th and 14th century. Incredible place. Question?
Do you need to make the reservations in advance for the lantern tours, or can they make it as they get there?
Well, usually you should do the reservation in advance. Just speak to your DMC. You can also contact the castle itself, the National Park Authority. It's on parks.org. And then you can find the information about Nimrod Castle. But basically, the best for you to do is to contact your DMC.
And it starts at sunset, or?
Starts at sunset. Okay. Starts at sunset. You're going to get your own lantern and then walk about in the castle.
And will you have
highly recommend. Yes, you are going to have a guide. I really highly recommend this. This is an experience that it is like no other. Really like no other. Continuing down, we will go to a volcanic park. We're going to go to a volcanic park by the name Bental. If you can see, this is a kibbutz, which is called Merom Golan. Merom Golan is situated inside a volcanic mountain. The entire Golan Heights is actually a plateau of volcanic ash. So the Merom Golan has what we call tzimers, Z-I-M-M-E-R. This is the equivalent, the Israeli equivalent of the Italian agriturismo. These are about 4 to 5 star level accommodation, very small, very family oriented, not for large groups. If you have a group that is about, let's say, up to 5 couples, absolutely your spot. More than that, you better end up in the hotel. Okay? So, in the top of the mountain, of course, you're going to have a lot of very, very active outdoor activities in the Golan Heights. If it's ATVs, horseback riding, special motors vehicles, night gazing, stargazing. Golan Heights is the Israeli equivalent of the Wild West, including the cowboys, by the way. We do have, well, Jewish cowboys, but still cowboys. Well, yeah, goes without saying, I think one of the best steaks in the world is up in the Golan Heights. So, nothing changed out of that one. Continuing down, up. If you will go up from Merom Golan up to the top of the mountain, you will be in a coffee shop by the name Kofi Annan. Now, this is a game of words. Annan in Hebrew means cloud, but the name Kofi Annan is the secretary of the UN. I find it very, very, very funny. The reason why it's so good to be up here, not just because of the great coffee, you will have a wonderful view of the entire Damascus opening of Syria. Of course, you're in Israel, of course, but you're in a very high up elevation. And if you look to the east side, you'll see the entire eastern upper Galilee right in front of you. Perfect spot to be. Kofi Annan up on the Mount Bental. And of course, this is the mountain itself, Avital on the south, and we are now on Mount Bental. You can see the volcano layer right underneath you. Continuing down, Banyas. Banyas is a very, very important site, especially for Catholic or for any faith base. Banyas come from the Greek god Pan, the guy with the flute. And this is one of the only 2 places in the world outside Greece that has association to the Greek mythology. The one is Banyas, the other one is Jaffa, the rock of Andromeda, but this has nothing to do with this lecture. It's going to be in chapter 2. What's so special about Banyas, apart from the fact that this is a gorgeous, gorgeous nature reserve? This is the place where Jesus gave the keys to Peter for heaven and earth. So every time you're going to look at the papal state, with the 2 keys, every time you're going to look at a statue of St. Peter, this is where the story happened. This is where he got the keys. Very important spot. South of there is the city of Gamla. City of Gamla is the equivalent of Masada of the north side of Israel. Gamla means actually a camel back. Gamal in Hebrew, camel in English, and the shape of the city itself is shaped like a hump. 2 things are absolutely incredible about Gamla. 3 things actually. Number 1, you will find one of the oldest synagogues in the world. This synagogue is dated to the 1st century AD, meaning it was there at the time of the temple. Now this is quite amazing, because we always known that all the sacrification and all the worshiping of the Lord was done in Jerusalem. But here we have a living proof of a synagogue in existence in the time of the temple, that the temple was still there. Another place which is incredible in Gamla is the city itself. The city itself is built on the south end of the mountain. And the story goes, in the year 66 AD, the great revolt of the Jews against the Romans, when the Romans stormed into the city, and this is the breach of the wall. When they stormed into the city, the Jews actually took down the foundation of the city, and the city slided on the Roman legions, making them to retreat. The following day, the Roman legions charged again into the city, but this time the Jews had nothing. They couldn't win anymore because the city was destroyed. So 6,000 men, women, and child jumped from the death from this top down to the ravine below, in order not to be slaves in the hands of Rome. Josephus Flavius was the commander of the Galilee at the time. We will see a very similar story to this, actually 6 years later. 9 years later, in 73 AD. That's 7 years. 7 years later. We'll see a very, very similar story in Masada. If you want to understand Masada, you have to understand Gamla. Gamla today is a national park. The way down to the city, it's a schlep and a half. I'm not saying it's not, but it's really worth it. If you don't have time, you can just go to the observation point and just look at the city, reading the inscriptions of Josephus, which are just anywhere along the trail down. Another thing about Gamla, Gamla is the largest haven in the Middle East for bald eagles. Any question?
Can you get there? You mentioned that you have to go down the trail.
Yep.
Is there a way to get there? Is it that it makes it handicap accessible, that they can take a car or a cart or something down, or only walking?
Great question. Actually, just about half a year ago, National Park Authority opened a road. You see this road down here? Mm-hmm. This road connects to a small paved road that you can use a golf cart. Okay. To get almost to the city itself, then it's very much accessible. It is accessible all the way to the synagogue. To the top, it's kind of like Machu Picchu. You know, you can get up to the top, but to the absolute summit, it's going to be a little bit more tricky. To the city itself, you can go with a cart. I think it's an additional cost, but you have to speak with the DMC to make this happen.
They can make the arrangement.
Yeah, they can make the arrangement. Yeah. Continuing down from Gamla, this is one of the most beautiful spots, I think, in Israel. It's called Charuv Observation or Peace Observation, and it's the only place in the world where you can see the entire Sea of Galilee from point of entry of the Jordan River to the point of exit of the Jordan River. It's called Charuv, named after the Talmudic Jewish village by the name Charuva. And of course you have the tzimers that we spoke before, a very high-end luxury tzimers, again 5-star resort. You can have a spa over there. Beautiful place for relaxation, and a great place for devotion, by the way. If you have a group of faith-based, absolutely, that's a place I would stop for devotion, because from there you will see the entire layout of the land of the ministries of Jesus. Every single one, from Magdala to Bethsaida to Capernaum to Kol Sea. This is actually above, these are the cliffs that we remember in the book of Luke 8, the miracle of the swines. The two demons that were cast into the swines, and they jumped from the cliffs into the sea, the cliffs of Gadara. This is the cliffs of Gadara. So we are now actually above the place of the miracle of the swines. Very, very emotional place. Very. Continuing down, right underneath it, this is something extremely cool. You're going to have, up in Charuv, right here, you're going to have spas that were built in the late 2000s. Right underneath it, at the bottom of Gadara, you will find hot springs that were built by the Romans and by the Byzantines 2,000 years ago. 1700 till 1,500 years ago, right underneath that. Those ruins are open to the public. You can go and see them. They are the same as Bath in England or AQUA in Hungary. So we're talking about very well preserved set of bathhouses. And we still use the same water for the updated bathhouses and spa resort. Same water, same thing, but the facilities are 20th century. So you can go and relax in the state-of-the-art hot springs and just walk around and think of our ancestors bathing in the same water 2,000 years ago. Continuing down, we just finished now the Golan Heights. All of this was just the Golan Heights. From here, we're going to go to the east side. We're going to to the east side of the Galilee. We're going to move west into the heart of the Galilee. Let's look at the sites themselves. Rosh Pina, which is right across, right here. Rosh Pina, we have Tzfat, the city of Kabbalah and mysticism. We have Hula Valley, which is the largest haven of bird migration in the entire Middle East. Down from there, we have Manara Cable, which is the largest cable cart in the Middle East. Bat Yaar, which is a spa resort in the middle of the forest. Down from there, Yiron and Dalton. These are the place of the famous Israeli wine. From there, we're going to go to Montfort, which is a magnificent Crusader castle. And we're going to finish at Rosh HaNikra, which is a set of grottos, natural grottos, up on the northwest tip, right here, of Israel. So, let's go and visit Rosh Pina. Rosh Pina was the first Jewish settlement, modern Jewish settlement in the Eastern Galilee. It was established in 1882. And when you walk there, it's kind of walking like in Tuscany. They have their own special cuisine. They have their own special wine that they make. And actually, this building, it's a chocolatier. It's one of the best chocolates I've ever had in my life. So you can go over there to have a workshop of how to prepare chocolate in a building which is almost 200 years old. So this is, again, the Zimmers, same thing, what we spoke about before. The Galilee and the Golan Heights are scattered with Zimmers. Again, think agriturismo in Tuscany, very similar to this, very similar to that. Continuing down, of course, that's in the springtime. City of Tzfat. City of Tzfat is the place of the birth of the Jewish Kabbalah and mysticism. Now, after Madonna, or should I say Esther, everybody knows what Kabbalah is. Well, Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism was invented in this city right here in the 15th century after 1492, where the Jews of Spain were expelled by the Catholic kings Ferdinand and Isabella, and they were absorbed by the Ottoman Empire into the city of Tzfat. So until today, we have here Jewish agents from in the crowd. You know about Kabbalah Shabbat, right? The acceptance of the Sabbath, right? Beautiful. The acceptance of the Sabbath, the prayer that we use today, was actually made right here in Tzfat. Lecha Dodi and Shalom Aleichem Aleichem Shalom was done here in Tzfat in the 15th century. Every Jewish table that you have the blessings over the food were actually conducted, what we call Shulchan Aruch, was conducted by Rabbi Joseph Caro in Tzfat in the 15th century, right here. So if you have groups who are interested in more Jewish mysticism and the roots of the modern Judaism, this is your place. Also in Tzfat you will find the art colony, which they have the calligraphy. You can find special paintings that are made out of prayers. So it's actually words from afar. It looks like a painting. Stunning, gorgeous, and great cheese, amazing cheese. Question?
Yes, is there places we can experience the Kabbalah Shabbat?
Yes, great question. There is a center, actually this street is called Livnot Ulibanot. This is the center of Tzfat. A block away from this, there's the World Center for Kabbalah and Mysticism. Again, speak with the DMC. You can have a Shabbat dinner over there. You can have a full lecture about Jewish mysticism, what is Kabbalah, the whole thing. Absolutely. This is your place for mysticism, Tzfat. Continuing down from Tzfat, we're going to reach to the Hula Valley. Hula Valley in the Bible time was called Mei Marom, the upper waters. In the 50s, Israel drained the Hula swamp in acts of Zionism because most of Israel was swamp. Turned to be a fatal mistake. The problem was that those water, Mei Marom, those upper water, actually were natural screen for the dirt that comes from the Jordan River not to come down to the Sea of Galilee. So actually we, in a way, drained the biggest filter that we had for the Sea of Galilee. However, in the late 1990s, beginning of 2000, there was a reflood of the area, what you can see right here, reflood of Hula Valley. Something quite incredible. After we reflooded the Hula Valley, this place became a huge sanctuary for birds, for migrating birds. In the winter, especially in the summer, in the fall and in the spring. In the fall time, you'll find 50,000 pelicans and stork per day in Hula Valley. In the springtime, you'll find about the same number of cranes. coming back up to Europe. Now, incredible story. You look at this, you find a John Deere. You say, okay, what's the connection to the John Deere and Hula Valley? Funny thing, before the flood of Hula Valley, this area was made especially for crops of peanuts and corn. The biggest problem was that those flocks of birds stopped and consumed the grains on the fields. So what the farmers did, they used to take huge piles of bad crops and put it aside for the birds to leave the fields alone. The farmers used John Deere because that's what the kibbutzim over there had. So the birds associate a John Deere with food. Today what you can do, you can use the John Deere with a cart which looks exactly the same as the cart of the food, however it has people in it. So you can drive in a safari cart dragged by a John Deere and drive right like this. You see this? There's people here in the cart and you drive amongst the birds. If you try to put a Massey Ferguson over there, a red tractor, it won't work. Only a John Deere. So this is an incredible, these pictures, I took this picture in 2011 before I came to Chicago. So you can see how close it is, and my camera is not that good. So you can see how close you can get. So if you have a feeling of a bird watchers, which is again a niche market, very high-end niche market, this is your place, Hula Valley. Continuing the, well, yeah, that's, I'm very proud of this picture, by the way. Very proud of this one. Continue from Hula Valley, above the Hula Valley actually. So when you look at the layout of Israel, if let's say you have the Golan Heights, then imagine a huge ravine or a valley. That's the Jordan Valley and the Hula Valley, and then climbing up back again to the Golan Heights, to the Upper Galilee. We are now up in the Upper Galilee. You can use the largest cable car in the entire Middle East called the Manara. Okay, and if you take that cable car up at the top, you have several ways to get down. Either take your bus down, beautiful viewpoint, great coffee shop, or you can cycle down via a Crusader fortress by the name Chateau Neuf. One of the first Crusader fortresses in history, was built in 1104. Okay, so that's up here. The entire area is known for its exquisite land for vines. The best wine that we have in Israel comes from this region. Now, something quite incredible. In this one vineyard, you can have up to 4 different types of grapes. So you can come and say, how can that be? I mean, if you look at the vast plains of Ontario, it's one type of grape. How could that be? The reason is, because of the slopes of the mountain, we, the farmers in Israel, figured out a way to plant certain types of vines according to the wind regime. So in one point of the land, you're going to have an X temperature. In another point of the same land, you're going to have X plus Y temperature because of the wind regime and the change of climate, change of temperature. So you can have Zinfandel and Merlot, one next to another. Also, another thing about Israel, you know, we have what we call the Old World wine and the New World wine. In the old establishments of the wineries in Israel, such as Zichron, you will find the Old World wine, same that they do in France, same that they do in Germany. If you go to the Golan Heights and Upper Galilee, that's the New World wine. And some wineries, which are more the boutique wineries, actually combine them both. So you can have an Old World wine and a New World wine. So if you have someone who's interested in wine tasting, this is your place. Yiron, Dalton, Golan Heights, and Upper Galilee. Absolutely your place. This place over here is Bat Yar. We spoke about the cowboys before. Another spot for cowboys. Again, great steaks. It's situated in the middle of the forest. And it's about 7 to 6 miles away from the vineyards. So it's a great place for wine tasting and then a nice meal, and you're good for the day. Continuing westbound. If you go along the biggest ravine in the Galilee, it's called Exhib. The Jordan is a river. Exhib is a ravine or a stream. In Israeli terms, it's a river. In North American terms, it's a little creek, but we're very proud of our rivers. So the Exhib river, or the Exhib stream, actually was the main route in the time of the Crusader kingdom. What the Crusaders used to do, they used to build lines of defense that they can be visible. You remember, again, Lord of the Rings, that they lit up the beacon to have communication with each other? You remember that? Mm-hmm. When the Knights of Rohan were called upon? Same thing. In every crusade castle, you have to see at least 2 other crusade castles. So this is one of them. This is called Starkenberg. Starkenberg in German, the strong mountain, or Montfort, again, strong mountain. This is a Gothic style castle that was built by the Teutonites. Now, the Teutonites are the same people who built Berlin and established Prussia and also controlled Poland and Central Europe for about 400 years. They actually started in the land of Israel. Something amazing about this castle was never been conquered. It was surrendered in 1265. Now, the Mamluk Emperor Barbas, after a very long siege, couldn't take the castle, said to the Crusades, you know what? Take whatever you want, just leave this castle. I won't harm you, just take whatever you want. What they did, they took the entire library that they had with the taxation and everything, and we know Germans, they write everything. I come from a German family, I know what I'm talking about. So they had the entire library with them, and they took the library with them to Central Europe and established Berlin. So the biggest library that we have today about the Crusades is actually, if you look at this plateau right over here, you see this? These are 2 arches and a plateau. That was the Grand Library of Montfort. You remember the movie, or actually the book, The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco? There was the actor Sean Connery, so something in the 80s, that spoke about a huge Christian library. One of the fairy tales, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's a good assumption, that the idea of that humongous library was taken from the story of Montfort. Now, if you have a group that doesn't want to walk so much, by the way, this entire castle is inside oak forest. Absolutely, it's like a small Indiana Jones venture, it really is. If you have a group that doesn't want to go into the castle, just want to have an observation point, this was taken from a park by the name Goren, G-O-R-E-N, Goren. You can stop with the bus, have a nice meal over there, overlooking the castle, nice explanation, and just go on, continue from there. So it's a perfect place for a nice relaxation. Okay? Continuing down from Montfort, we will reach Rosh Hanikra. Rosh Hanikra, it's a set of grottos, natural grottos that was carved by the sea. What's amazing about it is the game of light and the color of the sea and the shape of the rock forms these beautiful crystal clear lagoons. It's about 45 to an hour stroll in those lagoons. The only way to get there is by a cable cart. Beautiful, especially on a stormy day. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. If you have people who are interested in scuba diving, this is your place also. Scuba diving several times over here. It's a very shallow dive, so you can have a lot of time in your air tank, and you see the colors above you. Stunning, gorgeous. Rosh Hanikra, northwest corner of Israel. Questions so far before we continue to our last point? All right, so from Rosh Hanikra, we're going to drive down. Let's see what we just did. We had Golan Heights, entered inland into the Galilee, and now we are actually on the west coast of the Upper Galilee. Remember, this is an itinerary. You can use the order of the site as an itinerary. So from Rosh Hanikra, we are heading down to AQUA. AQUA is the largest, most intact Crusader city in the world. We'll talk about it in a second. Gili Castle, another Crusade castle. Haifa, which is the Israeli version of San Francisco. Continue down to Zichron Yaakov, which is a place of wineries, and it's a small little town. Again, same idea as Rosh Pina. Continue down to Bet Sharim, the tombs of the Sanhedrin. Tzipori, which I think is the most important ex-biblical city, biblical time, but outside of the Bible city in history. Beit Keshet, which is a beautiful route, mostly for jeeps, if you're interested into more of a nature drive or nature cycle. Down to Merchavia, which is my home, and I have to speak about it. And then from there, Bet Alpha, the most intact rural synagogue in history in Israel. Gan HaShlosha, which is the Sachne, a beautiful oasis, and we're going to end up in Belvoir Castle. So let's dive in. AQUA, as we said before, AQUA is the most intact Crusader city in the world. It was the capital of the Crusades after the destruction or after the conquer of Jerusalem by Saladin. So from 1191 till 1291, it was the capital of the second Crusader kingdom. You ever heard of the city of Dubrovnik in Croatia? Dubrovnik is a replica of AQUA, because the Venetian traders, they used to trade with the Crusades, actually took the blueprints of AQUA and built a city by the name Regoza that we know today as Dubrovnik. Okay, that's in Croatia. AQUA, it's at least a day of visit, at least. You will walk in an underground intact city that is over 1,000 years old. Why was intact? When the Muslim conquered the AQUA, what they did, they actually leveled down the upper floors and caved it in to the lower floors. So what we had to do is just clear the debris. That's it. It's kind of like Lego. So you will find a full-scale city underground with markets, churches, streets, docks, everything underground. Okay? AQUA itself is home of one of the best markets in the world, and fish. Guys, if you like seafood, that's your place. Fresh, beautiful, and hummus. I think the best hummus in the world is in AQUA. Continue. Oh, okay. I want to talk about this. This is called the Effendi Hotel. This is a hotel that it's now a deluxe boutique hotel. Not cheap, but this is a place that you don't buy a room, you don't rent a room, you rent an experience. This was an actual palace. Effendi in Arabic is actually either a very rich man or a prince, Effendi. So this is a building that the foundation of it, the wine cellar, is from the Crusader period, so 1,000 years ago. The middle part is Ottoman period, so about 600 years ago. And the upper part is British Mandate, so 60 years ago. It's all in one building. And if you look at the frescoes in here, there are genuine frescoes from the 18th century. Genuine. Beautiful. Absolutely stunning. Effendi Hotel. Continuing, this is Gili Castle, Gadin, or Jadin. Again, one of the largest Teutonic castles in the Western Galilee. One thing which is absolutely incredible about Gili Castle, forget about the fact that it's a beautiful castle. It has a wonderful brewery, a local artisan brewery, and this brewery is also a place of shelter for youth. So it's a wonderful place to go and to give back to the community. Okay, there's a brewery and a small winery there also. Haifa. Haifa is one of the largest cities in Israel. It is the largest city in the north of Israel, and it's also the world capital for the Baha'i faith. How many of you work with the Baha'i? 1, 2, 3. We have a few people who work with the Baha'i people. So when you look at terms of pilgrims to Israel is not necessarily has to do either Christian or Jew or Muslim. It's also Baha'i, because let's not forget, Israel has 5 monotheistic religions, not 3. We have Judaism, we have Islam, we have Christianity, we have Baha'i, and we have Druze. Okay? So Haifa is the world capital of the Baha'i. The largest man-made park in the entire Middle East is in Haifa. Imagine the full Mount of Carmel, which again, for faith-based travelers, also very important. This is the place of Elijah and the prophets of the Baal. So when you look at the entire Mount of Carmel, which is about 400 meters, that will give us about 1,300 feet. From top to bottom, it's all a huge garden. Stunning, gorgeous to visit. Stunning, gorgeous. So that's in the nighttime in Haifa. One of the largest congress centers in Israel is Haifa. And another thing about Haifa, Haifa is the main port for all the excursion that comes from cruises. If you have a cruise, you're going to dock in 2 places in Israel. One is in Haifa, and then you have the opening for the entire north, what we saw just now, Sea of Galilee, Golan Heights, the whole area. And then the second dock you're going to be in is Ashdod. Then you have the opening for Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and the south and center of the country. Okay, so Haifa is your dock for excursion to the north. German colony, beautiful buildings that were built in the late 20s by German settlers. They were expelled by the British because they were followers of the Nazi regime. They were members of the Nazi party. So we had Nazis in Israel, as crazy as it sounds. So the British expelled them in the late 30s. Continuing from there, a little bit south, is the city of Zichron Yaakov. Zichron Yaakov, again, a replica, not a replica. It's the same time of Rosh Pina. So you see the same structure, same idea, late 19th century. This is the birthplace, my friends, of the wine industry in Israel. This is where it started. Here and in Rishon LeZion. Okay? So what we spoke about before, the old world, this is it. You'll find old cellars that was made by Baron Edmond de Rothschild. Same knowledge that he brought from France, he brought to Israel. Okay? So that's Zichron, a small, tiny little village, great for relaxation. They have a small promenade just for pedestrian, great cafes, great bars, cool place, really nice place. Continue from there, we're going to reach the city of Bet She'arim. Bet She'arim is the place of where we have the necropolis. Necropolis is the city of the dead. Here are the members of the Sanhedrin who were buried. Guys, the same Sanhedrin that trialed Jesus before the night of the crucifixion. It's the same Sanhedrin. The same Sanhedrin that wrote down the Jewish Talmud and Mishnah. It's the same Sanhedrin. So here, this is the tomb of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rabbi Judah, the president of the Sanhedrin, that the tradition tells that he had great relations with the Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Okay, you'll be able to visit in that. It's well, again, it's a city of tombs. And it's incredible to see that because you will see menorahs and sarcophagus 2,000 years ago, and they're intact. Nothing is a replica. They're all in situ. They're all how we found them. Continue from Bet She'arim, we're going to go to the city of Tzipori. If you really want to understand the parables of Jesus, you have to visit Tzipori. Because when you think about it, when Jesus grew up in a village, we all know that the Bible speaks about Nazareth, what good can come out of Nazareth. It's not my saying, that's a good book. Because Nazareth was a little tiny village with no significance. But Jesus was able to speak about taxation and about theater. How come a little boy from a small village knows about theaters and taxation? Because Nazareth was close to the main city, which is Tzipori. And Tzipori, I think, is one of the most important biblical sites in Israel. It's not in the Bible, but that affected and formed Jesus' life as a child. You will be able to go and to see the main market. Now let's not forget, Joseph was not a farmer, he was a carpenter. And he did not sell his carpentry in Nazareth, he sold it in Tzipori. So imagine Jesus as a little boy going with Joseph with his cart to sell the carpentry in the main market of Tzipori. You will be able to see the same market, even more so. Right here, this is called the Agora, the main market. The Romans used to draw in mosaic on the floor what is going to be the stand, what you can sell in that specific place. So you'll see a picture of fish, and a picture of grain, and a picture of rabbits, and a picture of carpentry. And that's how the vendors knew where their booths are, because they didn't have papers to write down the maps. One of those drawing is carpentry. So maybe, I'm not saying it is, but I'm not saying it isn't, this is the place of the booth of Joseph. Makes a lot of sense. So this is the city of Tzipori. Incredible mosaics. They're one of the best preserved mosaics you'll find in the entire Middle East. Roman theater, and again, one of the largest cities in the time of the Jewish Mishnah and Talmud, and even before that, in the time of Jesus. So that's from the 1st century BCE up until the 7th century, 4th century, but the 7th century was completely abandoned. Okay? Tzipori. This over here is the road that we call the road of Bet Keshet. If you have a group that is interested more in nature, they want to have like a jeep ride in the lower Galilee, you can do that going in one of the most beautiful viewpoints that you'll find in the lower Galilee. This area is situated between the city of Nazareth and Tiberias. Tiberias is right over here, and it's all in oak forest, and you can rent some jeeps and just go along and see Mount Tavor, the Valley of Ksulot, the House of Rimon, all the places that Jesus walked in. This is the main route. Next to it is a place which we call the Gospel Trail, which is a walking path between Nazareth and Capernaum. It's almost the same path. So if you have people with disabilities who would like to have the atmosphere, the feel of what it looked like in the time of Jesus, you can go on Bet Keshet Road. Okay? Before I get to Merchavia, any questions? All right, Merchavia, my home. Merchavia was the first moshav, or Jewish settlement in Jezreel Valley, built in 1911. And if you want to understand how Jezreel Valley looked like before, how it looks like today, come and visit Merchavia. In Merchavia, many people don't know that there was a unit of the German Air Force. There was actually a battle here, an air battle in the First World War. That was in the time when Germans actually, like in Germany, actually had good relationship with the Jewish people. That's the First World War. So they used Merchavia as an air base on raids against Allenby, which is absolutely incredible when you think about it. Today you're going to find a museum of the third Aliyah, the third immigration to Israel, and about the life of the pioneers in Jezreel Valley and the beginning of the Zionist dream in Jezreel Valley. Not so far from Merchavia, there is a synagogue, an ancient synagogue that was built in the Byzantine period, late Roman period, beginning of the Byzantine period. We're talking about the 4th century, end of 3rd, beginning of 1st century AD. This was built by farmers. What's so beautiful about this synagogue? The mosaic is completely intact. Now, if you look at the drawing itself, it looks like a kid did it. The face doesn't look so, if you look, for example, if you go back to the mosaics of Tzipori, look at the difference. I mean, you can see this was made by an artist. Look at this. This looks like a drawing. If you go to Bet Keshet, but why I love this place? This shows the devotion of people. It belongs to a very small village of Bet Alpha. They didn't have the money, unlike the rich people in Tzipori. Again, goes very well with the parables of Jesus, very well. But still, I can hear them going to find an artist to make for them a drawing in the synagogue and saying that's what we can offer, that's what we have, but we want to honor God. So please accept this and build a synagogue for us. So I think this is, in a way, a naive time capsulate of people who wanted to worship God and to give honor to God, and that's what they could afford. Because still, you look at the mosaic, which was very, very, very expensive. It's not the best artist, but you can see the devotion of the people, which I think it's amazing. Plus, this is the first excavation that was done by the Hebrew University. I think it was 1929. First excavation. It's completely intact. It's a national park. Again, speak with the DMC. Not a problem. You can schedule a tour there. Right next to it, this is the synagogue itself, and this is the Gilboa Mountain. That's Merchavia, by the way. This is where I grew up. So this is the Gilboa Mountains. This is the same place that recounts in Samuel 1st, 28, 29, and 30, the last battle of Saul versus the Philistines. You can check it. There's a Bible Come to Life episode about it. It's called Bet She'an Gilboa. So you can have this, what I just spoke about, you will see it at Bet She'an Gilboa from the biblical references. Continuing down, one of the most beautiful places in the world, I kid you not. Gan HaShlosha, Sachne. Mark Twain said, one of the most beautiful places in the world. He visited it in the 19th century. He wrote a book, we spoke about it at the beginning of the lecture. He wrote a book by the name Innocents Abroad. Take the book, skip the first 300 pages, we don't care about Venice, and reach Israel. What's amazing about this book, he found Israel with no shade, swamps, band-aids, horrible place to be in. Talk about 150 years ago. Do yourself a favor, read your groups. When you're in Israel, open Mark Twain, Innocents Abroad, read what he saw, look around, and tell him, boy, were you wrong. That's amazing to look how much we progress in less than 150 years. Gan HaShlosha, Sachne, no religious significance. However, it's warm pools. Sachne, Sukhun in Arabic, meaning warm. So these waters are always around 80 degrees. Always, year round. Beautiful, crystal clear water, a great place again for devotion, for relaxation, just off the beaten track. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. And again, it's a national park. Gan HaShlosha, the Sachne, the use of water. This mill is not that old, it's about 350 years old. It's not that old in Israeli terms. You can still see how the water was used to ground the flour. So that's also a nice spot. Belvoir Castle. Belvoir Castle is the prototype of Western castles in Europe. How come? How is that? This castle was built at the midst of the 12th century by the Hospitallerian order. What happened was they built a new form of castle which is built exactly for war, what we call concentric castle. A castle within a castle within a castle. Okay? In 1190, Saladin besieged, or actually 1189, Saladin besieged Belvoir and couldn't take it. For 2.5 years, he couldn't take it. Actually to a point that when he had a rebellion in Yemen, the people of Yemen said to Saladin, how can you control us if you cannot even beat one castle? After you destroy the entire Crusader army, how can you not take one castle? So Saladin, it's actually incredible to read the scriptures. Saladin, the Chronicles, Saladin said, yeah, I could not take the castle because I had a huge snowstorm. Guys, there's no snowstorms in that area. It's semi-desert. But you can understand the significance of that castle. So what am I saying? Why is that so important to go and visit? Belvoir Castle, as we said, is a prototype of the Western European castles. In 1190, Saladin said to the defenders, the Templar Knights at that time, said to the defenders, there were about 400 knights versus almost 20,000 Muslims, and they couldn't take it. He said to the defenders, just go. I promise you, I'm not going to touch you. You can either go to the city of Tyre, which was still Crusades, or you can join the military campaign of Richard the Lionheart. I will not touch you. They walked to the siege of AQUA, and they joined Richard the Lionheart. By the way, his name at that time was not Lionheart. There are no lions in England. The lion, or the symbol of England, the lion, comes from the Lion of Judea, from Israel. That's nobility, come from Israel. So when those defenders of the castle joined Richard the Lionheart's army, they gave him the blueprints of Belvoir Castle. And when that army returned back to England, Richard never got to England, he died in France, but his army did, they brought the blueprints to his brother John, same guy from Robin Hood. Now look at this. This is the blueprint of Belvoir Castle. This is the blueprint of the Tower of London. It's the same castle. It's the same castle. The center of the Tower of London was built by William the Conqueror in 1066. The perimeter around it and the design of it is based exactly on Belvoir. So if you have groups who are interested in crusades or interested in military campaigns, you do not want to miss Belvoir. Absolutely. This is one of the most important crusade sites in the world. And it's, again, it's a national park. You have to speak with your DMC to get there. Gorgeous place. Gorgeous, gorgeous place. Well, this we're heading to the central of Israel. Any questions for what we saw so far?
You mentioned a lot of the wineries.
Mm-hmm.
Are the wines, at what level are the wines? Like if I have travelers that go and they're used to going to France and they're used to going to some of the top wineries in the world,
Mm-hmm.
are the wines of Israel online with that? Are they kosher wine? Are they, how are they prepared and how do they compete against world wines otherwise?
Well, when you look at the level of the Israeli wine, when I was a kid, the wine in Israel was absolutely disgusting. I'm saying this out loud. Why? Because in order to keep it kosher, we used to cook it. Now, when you cook wine, you kill it. That's it. That's the end of the wine. About in the early 90s, some rabbi in Israel came and said, hold on, our ancestors didn't cook the wine. It was still kosher. So we can find a way how to make live wine like everywhere else in the world, and it's still going to be kosher. So the wine in Israel is kosher because it's made and observed only by observant Jews. So it's kosher, from top to bottom, side to side, kosher. Now it competes with the best wines in the world. Same as the vineyards in Tuscany, same level of the vineyards in France, same level of the vineyards in the Napa Valley. Actually, Yatir wine and the Golan Heights wine, those two wineries are keeping winning awards year after year after year after year. So these are the big vineyards. You will be able also to get the smaller vineyards or the boutique vineyards, which is again like Castel wine wins the top awards in Europe. It's par to any wine country, major wine country in the world. Other question? All right. Well, thank you so much, and I'll be seeing you in about, what was that? About a month from now for chapter 2 of the Hidden Gems. Thank you and shalom.